Welcome everyone to the Learning to Birth webinar series where we interview some of the world's most inspiring thought leaders on birth and pregnancy. And today we have with us someone who's there to help us after we give birth, particularly with our breastfeeding, and that's Anna Horn. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Anna. I'll introduce you. Anna Horn is a breastfeeding specialist, doula, and founder of Every Woman Collective, an online platform showcasing interdisciplinary work on inequalities with women's health. Anna holds a master's in science in social epidemiology and a BA in anthropology. Anna has worked in HIV sexual health outreach, national maternal-child health surveillance, and education. It's really great that you're with us, Anna.
Thank you.
Tell us about your background.
Well, I'm a breastfeeding specialist, and I work on the front line of breastfeeding support in a London hospital, very busy hospital. Wow. And I also volunteer for a breastfeeding support charity. But before this, and I'm also a postnatal doula, but before this, I worked in research. So I worked on a surveillance study where I helped to collect data on pregnant women living with HIV. And I've always worked in kind of the sexual health, HIV field, doing outreach work, and in education as well.
How did you get into being a breastfeeding specialist and doula?
Yeah, well, I think if I could take it back a little bit. So growing up, never really considered breastfeeding as a thing. I remember the first time I heard a woman talking about breastfeeding was when I was at university, 18, 19 years old. And my professor talked about breastfeeding her children. And so when I came to London to do my master's, I ended up, not by chance, but again, just not planning it, but just happened to hear a lecturer talking about the inequalities of breastfeeding in the UK. And that really sparked my interest. And so I ended up writing my dissertation on breastfeeding. And then after I had my daughter, I got support from a local breastfeeding support group and started becoming involved with that group. And then a job came up at a hospital for breastfeeding or infant feeding supporter. And I went out for it and got it. And that's how that's how I kind of got into it, really.
That's incredible.
But always been really interested in it.
Yeah. We've got lots of mums who are listening here who might be pregnant but never breastfed before. So we're going to have lots of questions for you because I'm sure that, when you're pregnant for the first time, how do you do it? How does it all happen? So tell us, how does a baby actually know how to breastfeed?
Well, that's a really good question. So when I talk to pregnant women, I kind of describe it as, when your baby's in your tummy, they have nutrition constantly pumped to them. And then suddenly they're born and they have to learn this really complicated skill, which is breastfeeding. And it's, breastfeeding is what nature intended for human babies, and it's what babies are born to expect. So the instincts are there, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. So it does take practice for the mom and for the baby. And often when I see new moms, just hours after birth, and they're trying to get the baby on the breast, I do say that that you might know all the principles and all of the skills, but you're learning with another person as well. So that can take time for the baby to really learn how to open the mouth really wide and take a mouthful of breast as opposed to just a nipple. So it does, even though it's natural, it does take time for moms and babies to learn.
Yeah, I had this interesting experience after both my births, and I had a doula, so I was prepared for it. That hour after birth, the babies are actually really alert and their eyes are open wide, at least when I had my natural births, and they lie on your chest, right? And their head kind of like it thumps around.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah.
And they thump your breast and then they find the nipples. What about, Do they, because I know like your milk doesn't really come in for a few days. You start off with colostrum. Do they need any milk those first few days? How do they get by?
Yeah, so your baby with healthy term babies, it's not at risk of low blood sugar, that has no other health concerns, really
Yeah.
kind of chunky babies. So really well. You
Yeah.
know, nature intended for the first of days for babies and moms to recover from childbirth. And they're born, like I said, term babies are born with lots of stores. So the first couple of days, if they don't make exactly, you want to aim for 8 to 10 feeds a day. That's our policy where we at the hospital where I work. So we say 8 to 10 days. Sometimes you hear 10 to 12 at least. But if you don't make exactly 8 feeds a day in those first 2 days, that's okay. Your baby will survive in the first couple of days. And then that's giving you time to learn, to become more comfortable with breastfeeding, to rest from childbirth, because, it's hard for babies to be born as well. They're pretty exhausted. So that time is
Yeah.
there for them to recover. Yeah.
I guess that's why the babies, they come out so cute and chubby, so that they've got enough
Yeah.
on their
They've got
tummy.
enough fat to keep them.
Yeah. What does it feel like when the milk comes in?
So a lot of women describe having their breasts feeling much heavier and feeling engorged as well. So usually you kind of come in with this rush of milk if you've been stimulating your breasts at least 8 to 10 times a day, 8 to 12 times a day, wherever you find in the guideline. And usually your body kind of brings in more than you actually need. And then over time, your baby will kind of calibrate things and tell your body the right amount to make. So yeah, usually you feel engorgement or your breasts feel heavy.
Yeah, it can be interesting, can't it? Like that pinprick, it just pinpricks all
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
Especially the letdown. The letdown feels so strange. It's like it's sort of like almost like a little mini orgasm in your breast, but not really. Like it's sort of like
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
women describe different things with the letdown. So I've heard some women who are recalling letdowns, from years ago, and say that they remember kind of like a pinching, tingly sensation. Some people describe it as a throbbing sensation, but whatever it is for you, you know when it's when it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. What is breastfeeding painful?
It shouldn't be. And
Yeah.
so pain is a very interesting topic that I really like to ask women to get in tune with their bodies with, because after you have a baby, you've been through pregnancy, you have lots of hormones kind of going all over the place, and then you have a baby that's constantly stimulating your breast. So you're not used to your breast being stimulated that much. So there is a level of sensitivity that your nipples may feel, but that should go away in a couple of weeks. But I think women should really kind of get in tune with themselves and they, only the woman will know, or the parent will know, if they feel like, okay, this is a shallow latch and this is what's causing the pain, or if it's, my nipples and breasts are just feeling sensitive at the moment. But with a good latch and good positioning, breastfeeding should not hurt. And so I always say that some women describe having that initial 30 seconds when the baby first latches on is a bit painful, but if it's painful throughout the feed, then there's something you want to get support about. But if that pain goes away within the first 30 seconds or so, then that's normal.
Well, that's good to know, because some mums do find it painful to breastfeed, but when I breastfed, it was only ever if like the angle was wrong or something like that it was really kind of hurting. And if I was so used to it by then, I would just be like, oh, it doesn't matter, just get it done. But if it is hurting, definitely go and see someone like Anna who can help you with the right positioning and help you, because I actually had you have to really like stuff the baby's mouth in there, I guess, when you first learn how to do it, and that can be a new kind of sensation as well. So someone like Anna will show you how to do it, the position that's right for you. What can a mum do? Like, our milk supplies go up and down depending on what we're eating,
Mm-hmm.
on how we're feeling and what we're doing. What can a mum do who's a little bit worried about her milk supply?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And this comes up all the time.
Yeah.
Mothers worried about their ability to produce milk. And so the best thing to do is to put the baby to the breast and extract the milk. And if there's an issue with latching and the baby's not being able to get as much milk as possible, then hand expressing or pumping, you want to empty the breast as much as possible. That's the best way to really kick up your milk supply, and include lots of skin-to-skin contact with your baby, and that's going to help. And there are some kind of home remedies that people try. That, oh gosh, the name of the oh gosh, it just completely left my mind. But some herbal teas and things that say that it can help with increasing milk
Yeah.
supply. So I'd say if you have a home remedy that maybe your family suggests and you want to give it a try, then definitely, I'd say do that as well. But the best way is through extracting milk from the breast.
There is a lot of breastfeeding teas that you can buy out there.
Yeah.
If you go to ihope.com, you'll probably find 10 different types. And I did drink them. My trouble was always oversupply rather than undersupply.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of had to get used to your breasts kind of just wanting to give milk at all kind of inconvenient moments. And
Yeah.
but what I found really helpful, I think this is my doula. I had an amazing doula for my first birth who really gave me the information I needed about breastfeeding and healing, and seen me all the way through. And she was really eat your protein. And I know there's lots of different ways to get protein in it. She was vegetarian, I was vegetarian at the time. But she, because of her wisdom, I would supplement myself, with all sorts of powdered, natural, healthy, just normal dietary plant proteins.
Yeah.
And it was that boost in protein meant that I think my body could make so much milk. What about everyone has a different experience in birth. What about ladies who've had a C-section? Is breastfeeding different for them? Because the hormones aren't being switched on during labor so much if they've gone straight to C-section, or maybe if they have had a labor, then they have had a chance to experience those labor hormones. But is breastfeeding different after a C-section, and how can a woman who's had a C-section really prepare for that and help herself and her baby?
Yeah. So I think it can. I'll say that women who have a cesarean section, they can breastfeed. So with some women, they'll have a cesarean section and they'll know. So let me just clarify that. So sometimes the cesarean section can delay milk coming in. Yeah. However, I've supported some women that have had a cesarean section and they can express 10 mils of colostrum right after birth. And then there's some where it takes a few days for things to really start to really flow for them. And so each case is, it could go either way. So I think if a woman knows that she's having cesarean section, then from 37 weeks, you can start doing a bit of hand expressing and harvesting the colostrum just in case, there's a bit of delay. And so just to kind of take your mind off the worry of feeding your baby, that you can have some milk stored for your baby.
Now, if you do harvest that milk, there are specific ways, there's specific guidelines you need to follow, isn't there? So you're best off, to talk to your specialist or whoever your consultant is, because we could tell you here, but it's actually quite complex harvesting that milk and how to prepare it and keep it safe before baby comes. So probably best to speak to someone that And my doula, the advice she gave me, but it's up to everyone personally, of course, and individually, and what situation you're actually in. But the advice she gave me was that if I needed to go for C-section, even if I need to try and labor a bit beforehand, because then that does help the milk. But if you have an emergency C-section that's just being scheduled, or even an elective one, because you just know you have that sense that you and your body and your baby need it, then, you just talk to your specialist and get them to help you with how to express that milk beforehand, because you can, and you'll be awesome at it. Now, we've waited all so long because we've been pregnant and we haven't had the coffee, we haven't had the booze. Can we have those things? Now we're breastfeeding. Give us the hard facts, Anna. What's the reality here? What do we do?
Okay. Yes. So the short answer is yes. You can have a glass of wine and breastfeed. So I think for very specific details, a good resource is La Leche League. So they're an international breastfeeding organization. They have really kind of detailed information on breastfeeding and alcohol, but I'll just give you the gist of things. So the short answer is yes. And generally people, it's said that if you have a unit of alcohol, so if you have a glass of wine, wait at least 2 hours before you feed the baby, because some of the alcohol can kind of creep into your breast milk. But as babies get a bit older, processing that alcohol becomes a bit easier for them. And my general rule is, if you're too drunk to look after your baby, you're too drunk to breastfeed. So in moderation, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I think I had wrong information. I think I was told, like, this is like years ago, more than a decade, like not to have any alcohol. So I didn't. So now I know I could have partied way harder than
Absolutely. I did. And also there's no need to pump and dump. So unless you're not for the alcohol anyway. Yeah. So you can, once the alcohol has left your blood system, it's out of your breast milk. So there's no need to express it and get rid of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Now, something pregnant mothers breastfeeding mothers face probably at least once during their breastfeeding life is, swollen blocked ducts, maybe even mastitis. I used to get, because I got so much milk supply and my baby, the only place he'd sleep was on my chest. And sometimes I was just like, yeah, just sleep there. And he'd put his head on my breast.
Yeah.
And the duct, always the same duct. I knew the duct.
Yeah.
And I had a very close relationship. It would block well.
Yeah.
And, so what can a woman do when she does notice a hard or swollen or hurting duct? What can she do to help avoid mastitis? And then if mastitis happens, and a mum's worried, what can she do?
Yeah. Can I just speak a little bit about trying to avoid mastitis a little bit?
Absolutely,
yes. Okay. So, so even engorged breasts, if they're really full, can really feel painful as well. So things like engorged breasts can lead to things like mastitis, which is an infection in the breast. And so avoiding it would just be making sure that you're draining your breast. Things like timing your feed, so feeding your baby every 4 hours in a strict routine. The advice is to feed your baby responsibly. And so that will help to keep your breasts drained in a sense. And also keep being aware of wearing tight fitting bras and clothing. Maybe you mentioned your baby kind of laying on your breast. Maybe it was an awkward position and it kind of blocked the duct. And you also mentioned oversupply as well. So that that probably could have contributed to it. But if you do find that you have mastitis, the advice is to just keep putting the baby to the breast, keep expressing anything to just drain the breast, and that's going to help with healing.
Yeah. As soon as I would notice that duct, I would hop in, like, this is like, because my doula, I don't know how I would have survived without what she told me.
I'm really happy to hear that your doula was so helpful to you.
Yeah,
that's really good to hear.
She was probably one of the, like, is there such a thing as famous? I don't know, but she was like the famous doula where I live, who had been to hundreds of births. But, I would just hop straight in a hot shower. And I mean, like, I mean hot. And I would point it at my boob and just massage the
Yeah,
swollen duct
absolutely.
at the same time as stimulating, like basically milking the nipple.
Yeah,
And so just I would very lightly, like not hard so it would hurt, but very lightly like push on that swollen duct and milk that
yeah,
nipple.
absolutely.
That would get that. And I would know if it wasn't coming out, because when on the nipple, it's you don't just
Mm.
have one hole like you see in the movies. You have
Yeah,
like
it
maybe
comes out of
15 holes.
multiple. Yeah,
You have 15 holes, and I would know when that duct was blocked, because it was like the highest producing one, but the milk wouldn't come out of that particular hole on my nipple, and I would just keep massaging until it came out. And you can manage it like that. Like my doula said, like use a cabbage leaf or something. I don't think it
yeah,
did anything for me. Maybe other women can
yeah.
say that it does. I
I've
don't know.
heard that for some women cabbage leaves help with yeah, with the tenderness, the soreness. But you're absolutely right. Massaging, warm compress, a warm
Yeah.
shower, all of that will help to relieve the pain as well.
Yeah, it's funny because as a new mom, you suddenly learn there's this whole part of your body that has this like whole territory and map to it that you had no idea about, because every duct has its own personality and does a different
Yeah,
flow rate. And
and every woman has a
yeah,
super boob.
yes, it's incredible, isn't it? Oh
There's
my
there's
gosh.
always that one that just produces more. Yeah,
Now, if a
and
mom is
that's
thinking
normal
about
as well.
having a couple of children quickly, um, but she still wants to keep breastfeeding, can she
Hmm.
breastfeed through that second pregnancy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, your body's able to make milk for your your baby that you so your first child or the one you're currently feeding, and able to produce colostrum for the baby that you're carrying at the same time. So that's absolutely
Oh,
possible as well. Some women
yeah.
do describe sometimes um, as your body's making colostrum, that sometimes your toddler or however old the baby that you're feeding, sometimes
Yeah.
they don't like the taste of it, and so they kind of wean themselves off. But it's definitely
Yeah.
but that's individual to every child. But it's definitely possible to tandem feed
Well, that's
and
really
to
good.
feed while pregnant. Hmm.
Oh, that's good to know. That's, I'm sure, a big relief for a lot of people listening.
Mm.
Let's say, what are some good ways that a woman, like, because breastfeeding is different for everyone, and you've got to do it sometimes out in public, or maybe in bed at night, even like with your babies. What are like the most comfortable breastfeeding positions so that you can, just sort of just do it and not mind too much?
Yeah, so there's so what I always suggest for sleeping, and I just want to point out that you do want to look at guidelines, your local guidelines, because I know you have an international audience, but looking at your local guidelines for safe
Yeah.
sleeping, for bed
Yeah.
sharing. But with all of
Yeah.
that in mind, assuming that we're sleeping safely, the side laying position is a lifesaver for a lot of women. And that's kind
Yeah.
of where you can lay on your side. Most women kind of put one leg up, kind of bend it, slightly bended, and then having their arm around them. So they arm kind of out to the side. And that creates this kind of cocoon around the baby. So the baby can't wiggle down and they can't roll over because its mom, has created this little cocoon around them. And a lot of the research has shown that mothers who breastfeed just tend to be more aware of where the baby is in the bed,
Oh,
and
yeah.
what's going on, and have just sleep much lighter. So this has been a lifesaver for a lot of. I know that I still do this position when I'm sleeping with my toddler. But that was a good position to do lying down. And also you can do the kind of it's called the laid back position, or it's also known as biological nurturing, where you can kind of lean back and feed the baby on your chest if you're
Oh,
lying down.
yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to feed your baby when lying down.
When I had my first one, I bought a breastfeeding like rocker that you see.
Mm-hmm.
And I did use it a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
honestly, not very much, because, when you, particularly like when you've just had a new baby, you're so tired and you're in bed a lot because you're healing and recovering. And I just found, yeah, that side laying position, now you've reminded me, I think I spent 6 months in that side
Yeah,
lying
it's
position.
you know what's
No,
really
because
interesting about that position. There was I read this study that filmed breastfeeding families, and they just filmed them sleeping at night. And most of the mothers, the breastfeeding mothers, tend to get in that side laying position naturally
yeah,
without being told. And
yeah,
when I think about having my daughter, no one told me about this, about making this kind of C shape around the baby, but that's what I naturally did.
yeah.
So I think there's something, there's something to it.
It's so funny because you just kind of lie there and the baby will kind of like open its mouth and you'll just sort of like
Yeah,
point in their mouth, and it's just so easy and it's just so natural. But
it
in all the
is.
movies, of course, in all the movies, you're there in a chair holding the baby up,
Yeah,
back against
yeah.
the door and tired. And I had a breastfeeding pillow that I really loved. I got it for my second one. All these
Mm-hmm.
things, like all these things I mentioned, like you can just get them like secondhand on, FB Marketplace. You don't ever have to go and buy these things for new. There's just so many around. But I got this really nice breastfeeding pillow that was nice and firm. And that was really helpful when she was newborn and she was small, and I'd put her on it, put her on the breast, but when they're big enough, like, a few weeks old, and they've got some kind of strength and stamina to them, and they can just lie in that bed and open their mouth and you point their breast in, and side lying is just, it's a savior.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about like, when, like, every country is different, every culture is different, and of course every woman's values are different. But
Mm-hmm.
how could a woman who wants to approach breastfeeding out of the home and out in public?
Yeah, no, so I really like that you framed it that way, because some women don't feel comfortable feeding in public, and that's absolutely fine. And when I think of most countries, and again, because you have an international audience, it's different where you live. But in places like the UK, the US, Australia, it's legal for women to breastfeed
Yeah.
anywhere. So you have the law behind you.
Mm.
So anyone who says anything to you, and I know this can create a lot of anxiety for women who want to go out and about, and breastfeeding is really good for that, because you don't have to bring any equipment, you don't have to warm anything up, you can just pop the baby on the breast when they're ready to feed. But I'd say you have the law behind you, and anyone who says anything, they're wrong. And what I think what I know what helped me was socializing with other mothers who were also breastfeeding. And so when you
Yeah.
go out, everyone's doing it. So you kind of have that group support. And so that way, when you do find yourself out with your family, and perhaps you're not with your mom friends, you've kind of worked up and built up that confidence to breastfeed in public. But you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it little by little. And there's certain little tips and tricks that you can use to kind of help make yourself feel more comfortable. If that's you, some women are happy to, just lift their shirt and go for it. Other women prefer to be a bit more covered. And so finding what works for you and what makes you feel comfortable.
Yes. And I mean, it can be quite confronting, like
Yeah.
those first few weeks afterwards, and you just, you're out there and your baby needs to feed, and you just pull down that top, because we don't really see that much flesh from the shoulder down out in
No.
society that much, particularly in colder climates. You know to be honest, like, it's really funny because people do kind of stare a little bit, but they don't really stare in a way that is like, it's more like they kind of look and then they go, oh my God, I've looked, and then they consciously
Yeah.
look away. So it's like it's like the unstaring that really gets to you. And
Yeah.
I kind of learnt some ways to get around that. I mean, like with my clothing, and
Mm-hmm.
I had my trick, and I will share it with the mums here because I loved it. My trick, I learned, like, I would double layer. So I'd have one sort of tight fitting singlet underneath, and maybe a baggy kind of t-shirt or top, or even a baggy singlet on top, depending on what the weather was, like a winter baby or a summer baby. And I would just pull like one day, pull one down, and then like you kind of like, oh, pull one up, that's it, pull one up and pull one down. He will do it now. Pull one down and have a scarf like this, like this really thin kind of muslin. And in between like the three, you'd barely even know you're breastfeeding, but it was really, really comfy and happy for baby and happy for mum. So that's my trick. I'll share.
Yeah, absolutely. I when you were saying, I was like, that's what I did as well. And it helps to cover your, your belly if you don't want everything exposed. And honestly, once there might be a flash of nipple while you're getting the baby latched on, but once the baby is latched onto the breast, you see nothing. It looks like you're holding the baby, really. So anyone that's watching really might not even realize that you're feeding.
Yeah, people don't look. They might look across to what the movement is, but then when they realize what you're doing, they just stop looking. And people I found were really respectful. I even saw a couple of days ago on Facebook how there's a university somewhere, maybe England, maybe America, that's actually made all these posters to put on campus saying, showing women breastfeeding, saying you can breastfeed. And they've actually put the posters on their website so that any university can download them and put their logos on them and share them around so students feel.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we covered kind of breastfeeding at night a little bit when we were talking about side laying, and like I tried different things for both my babies. Like my first one, I tried a little rocker or cot with him first, and then I think I just had him like in those little things that you can buy that they lie on in the middle of the bed, and I would put him on those so he was safe and feed him then. But my daughter, I was a lot more flexible with, because like you get used to it. But do you have any tips for feeding at night besides side lying? Like, because it can be really draining. Yeah.
So tips for feeding at night. So keeping your baby close to you will help with just being able to respond. So if they're in a bassinet or like a side cot, or if they're actually in bed with you, once you've really got the hang of breastfeeding, you might find that that you don't even really have to wake up to feed the baby. You just pop the boob in and the rest will take care of itself, and both of you can just ease back into sleep. But I do know that sometimes, depending on your baby, depending on the mom, sometimes babies wake up a bit more frequently. But I just say make sure that you have support around you, so that maybe you're supported during the day, so that you can get some rest, so that you're able to kind of wake in the night when you need to. So there's, people have different sleeping arrangements so they're more comfortable. So maybe your partner might sleep in another room, for example. So there's different families do different things to help make that nighttime life work. And also just keep in mind that it's not forever. I know sometimes when you wake up at 4 a.m. and you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. It's not forever. They grow up, they grow out of it, and you'll be on to the next thing before you know it. But definitely key to get lots of support to help you to feel well and able to wake in the night, and keeping your baby close. Those are my kind of tips.
Like if you are still pregnant, my advice would just be to sleep as much as you can.
Yeah.
Still pregnant. And then when you've had your baby, again, any moment you can, just sleep, because it can be relentless and it can just, it does end, but oh my gosh, it goes on when it goes on and it's hard. So just, sleep as much as you can. Some women might be concerned like their baby is, feeding too much. Is there such a thing as a baby feeding too much? And what can a mum, what sort of help can a mum get if she's worried that the baby is maybe feeding maybe too shallow too often?
Yeah, so you can't overfeed a breastfed baby. So if baby that's feeding from the breast, you can't feed them too much. But I also just want to point out that sometimes, it's normal for babies to feed frequently. So especially when you think of young babies who have very tiny tummies, breast milk is easy for them to digest. So they You know, they take in the milk, they digest it, and then they're ready. The tummy's empty, they're ready to feed again. So all of that's normal, and all of that's nature's way of helping you to, and keep your milk supply up or increase it. So that's absolutely normal. I would say that if you find that baby feeding frequently is happening alongside pain, so indicating a shallow latch, that could be a sign that maybe the baby's not getting enough to eat. So do kind of watch out for the signs around it. But if your baby seems healthy and well, they're putting on weight as they should, they're having lots of wet nappies and dirty nappies, and they're content after their feeds, and they just feed frequently, then that's absolutely normal.
Yeah, I think I actually breastfed on demand, both my babies, and my son. I'm quite petite. My son, my first son came out, both kids did 95th percentile, kind of huge, lengthwise. And if I had have done every 4 hours, I know every mum's different and the advice I get is different, but if I had have done every 4 hours, he just wouldn't have gotten enough food. He was so hungry. He was literally so hungry to feed it was every 45 minutes really. But it was, I knew it was he was getting milk. There was just so much. He was a real hungry tiger. But, particularly at night times, it did get tiring, and I had to work out a system where, because you have to have a bit of sleep, and I would just be like, if he woke up less than every 2 hours, if we wanted to feed more than every 2 hours at night, I would just hold him until it was that 2 hour period and then say, now you can feed, because I trying to feed every 45 minutes at night was breaking me. So everything's different, and you can do it differently, and particularly get advice and help from where you are now. Anna, I know you offer consultations even online. So tell us about how women can get in touch with you and book a consultation with you, maybe online or in person, about their breastfeeding needs.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So I'm based in London, South London specifically. So more than happy to do face-to-face consultations, but I'm also launching remote breastfeeding support. So I'm offering free 15-minute consultation just to, for us to speak to each other and see if I'm the right person for you, and also kind of get an idea of what kind of breastfeeding issues that you're having. And so if you're remote, then I'm offering a 90-minute, after the free 15-minute consultation, you can do a 90-minute session just going through your breastfeeding history, what's led up to this point where you feel like you need support, and really just talk through all of the options and give you some support, and also try to find some local, ongoing, hopefully free support you can reach out to, that once you kind of feel like you've got over that hump, that you can then go out to a breastfeeding support group and just constantly feel supported in the breastfeeding. So that's a new service that I'm offering at the moment. So my website isn't up yet. It's launching in October, but definitely keep an eye out on my social media pages, so that you'll be updated when it's available. But I am taking bookings for face-to-face consultation or breastfeeding support, or online. You can just PM, direct message me, private message me, and we can have a consultation.
So we'll make sure that all of Anna's social media handles included below this video, and also we'll get a Calendly link from Anna so that you can just book straight with her and chat with her online remotely. I really can't it was just so, the more support that a woman can get from women like you, Anna, who have done it, who understand it, who are really there to help us, work out our challenges, because, breastfeeding is just something that the body does naturally. And, we can have a lot of different challenges that come at us from a whole lot of different directions. But when we have someone like you who's there to help us and say, yeah, you've got this, and it just makes life easier. So I really recommend, if you can spend 15 minutes with Anna, really do, because it really helps. It helps. I would have been a different mama if I hadn't have had the amazing advice going through, and it's great that you're out there, Anna. helping people.
Thank
We're not going
you.
to keep you too long, Anna. I hope that you're going to come back to, we're going to have another webinar series, Learning to Breastfeed. And so we're going to come back there, and I hope that you'll join us again, and we'll
Absolutely.
ask
Yeah.
you a lot more in-depth questions then. But I guess, like, just to end, do you want to tell us so about the Every Woman Collective? Can the ladies listening here join that? What is that?
Yes, so Every Woman Collective, it's a online platform that I created a couple of years ago to really highlight health inequalities among women. And so a lot of the work so far has been around breastfeeding. So I'm from America, if you haven't noticed by my accent. But in America, for example, there's Black women are the least likely to breastfeed of any other ethnic group. And this is regardless of income, regardless of education. We're just not breastfeeding our babies. And so those are the kind of issues that Every Woman Collective is designed to kind of highlight. And so it's not a platform that people can necessarily join. We do accept, if you want to write a piece, you're more than happy to get in touch with the team and submit something, and we can post it. Anything about women's health. We're going to relaunch it in October, so do keep an eye out for that. And we will kind of expand it to not only highlighting health inequalities among women, but also women's empowerment. So anything about women's health that's empowering, we want to highlight as well. So that's www.everywomancollective.org.
All right, we'll have that link below, and we'll talk a lot more about that after your relaunch, Anna, and when we see you next. And before we go, I'd just like to ask a really broad general question that maybe might inspire you, and you can just answer any way you like. But my question for you is, how can we as women be more supportive and less judgmental of each other?
Yeah, I think women have a lot of pressure in general about how we look, what we do, where we work, juggling family and work life, and it's very judgmental. And I found that in my own experience, as soon as you're pregnant, here comes the advice, here comes the judgment about the decisions that you make. And I think we can all agree on that raising tiny humans, it's very difficult. And the decisions that people make is very individual to their family. And so I think we should just take that into account, that it's hard, and most people are just doing the best that they can. And that it's what one person does isn't an attack on how you decide to raise your babies or your family or live your life. So I think we really do need to get back to being supportive of one another and non-judgmental.
Yeah, certainly having babies is all about choices, constant choices, and you've only got the skills that you have and the knowledge that you have. And I think that's one of the things I've aimed to do with the Learning to Birth webinar series is just bring people from around the world with lots of different perspectives, lots of different wisdom, so that women can get a full spectrum of what's out there and make choices that feel, like they match them and who they are and what they want. So thank you so much for your time today, Anna.
Thank you.
It's been great. It's been really, really inspiring, and I hope that the mums listening and mums to be listening have learned a lot more about breastfeeding than we ever knew beforehand. And look, have a great evening over there in London, and we'll talk to you really soon.
Yes, speak to you soon.
Everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, we'll see you on the next webinar soon.
Okay.